Now on BBC News, the latest from New York and around the world. Business Today.
This is Business Today, live from New York, where growing concerns around AI valuations are sending stocks lower. UK unemployment hits its highest level since the pandemic, putting pressure on the Bank of England to cut interest rates. Reining in the crypto queen, a Chinese woman at the heart of the UK's largest seizure of cryptocurrency will be sentenced today. And exceptionally rare, exceptionally expensive, the Mellon Blue Diamond goes up for auction in Geneva. Will it fetch a $30 million price tag? Hello and welcome to Business Today, live from New York. I'm Erin Delmore. We'll begin the program right here in the U.S., where financial markets have just opened pretty flat around concerns that elevated technology valuations could be hampering progress. Markets are closely watching progress toward the end of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. And technology and AI shares had rebounded on Monday from last week's deep losses, based on the expectation that the government would reopen as soon as this week. Now, the prolonged closure weighs on the economy and contributes to a data blackout for the Federal Reserve and traders alike. So joining me to unpack all of this is Olu Sonola, head of U.S. economic research at Fitch Ratings. Olu, it's always good to have you here. Let me start by asking you, what kind of impact could the end of the government shutdown have on markets?
No, I think the number one thing that it brings to the table is just clarity. There was so much uncertainty about what was ahead of us over the next 2 weeks heading into Thanksgiving holiday, and what most likely would have shut down airports and travel. The busiest season of the year, you just couldn't afford airplanes. You couldn't afford airports to be shut down. So the fact that that's off the table definitely would have been a sigh of relief for markets. And just the fact that the government will not grind to further halt. You know, you were starting to see so much more with SNAP. You were starting to see so much more with a few other things that needed to be off the table for the economy to move forward. And I think finally, you also have to get to the fact that we're going to start getting data again. So with new data, you actually have a much better read of the economy going forward.
Olu, one of the things that strikes me is that there's still uncertainty in how the federal government moves forward here, especially amid the gridlock between the two parties. And when it comes to the Federal Reserve, well, certainly the central bank was hampered, not having the information to make its decisions, but some information was never collected during the shutdown. So are we still in a little bit of this grind?
Yeah, the fog is not completely lifted. We're going to see through a little bit more. The fact that things start to come back in slowly. We may not get October inflation data at all. So it's possible that they will just skip that completely and just move to November. I think the labor market data for October, you can actually collect that retroactively. But you're going to lose some data. And that's not going to be good for the Fed. But they will try their best to make the best decision they can with whatever data they get. And obviously, they supplement the government data with private sector data.
Well, Olu, you talk about making the best decisions we can with the information we have. I think all of us are trying to do that every day. Olu, thanks. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Now let's move to the UK, where official figures of the jobs market show the number of people out of work has risen, with the rate at its highest level in 4 years. That unemployment rate rose to 5% in the 3 months to September, showing signs the jobs market has weakened. Now, according to the data from the Office for National Statistics, it's at the highest rate since 2021. The data also shows nearly 1.7 million people are claiming unemployment benefits, a slight decrease on the figure from a year ago. Jane Foley is the head of FX strategy at Rabobank, and she told us more about what this means for the Bank of England's rate-cutting strategy.
It's the highest unemployment rate since 2021, but outside of the pandemic, it's the highest rate for about a decade. But we've also got a slowdown, or a reduction, I should say, in the number of payrolled employees. But of course, there's been various other survey evidence, which is a little bit more forward-looking than some of the official data, showing us that the hiring rate in the country has been slowing down for some while. So whilst this data, is poor, it's a disappointment, it does tell us really what we already know. And in one respect, perhaps there is a silver lining here, because it does increase the possibility that the Bank of England could cut interest rates maybe as soon as December.
Now, OpenAI has been ordered to pay damages for the use of copyrighted song material by well-known German artists. The case was brought by the German Music Rights Collecting Society, GEMA, on behalf of lyricists of 9 well-known German songs. They argue that OpenAI's chatbot, ChatGPT, reproduced lyrics from copyrighted German songs without authorization, and that its AI was trained on protected content from the repertoire of its roughly 100,000 members. Well, Dr. Tobias Hofmüller is the CEO of GEMA, and he stressed the importance of the ruling.
It definitely is a landmark decision, because it goes well beyond just the actual case that's been heard. It's the first case in Europe where a court says that under EU law, if you are an AI company operating a large language model, you have to ask prior permission from the rights holders whose content you're using to train your model and reproducing the content in the further process of this model. So this changes everything. Basically, we were able to prove that OpenAI not only trained on the data, but stored these lyrics that are written by our members permanently in the model. And the model reproduced these lyrics when users typed in simple prompts such as, give me the lyrics for this and that song. So basically, they were acting like a database of song lyrics, where you could withdraw all the lyrics that you would request from the large language model.
A Chinese woman at the heart of the UK's largest seizure of cryptocurrency is due to be sentenced. Following an investigation by the Metropolitan Police, Chen German was convinced of trying to launder 61,000 bitcoins, which is now worth around £5 billion, taken from investors in China. Tony Han from the BBC's Global China Unit has more for us.
Police! Police! Where you are? Caught in bed, police raid the home of Chen Zhimian, the woman who brought 61,000 bitcoins to the UK. Authorities say Chen bought this bitcoin with money from a scam she led in China that pulled in 128,000 people. Police were tipped off when Chen tried to buy an £11.5 million property in North London with her assistant, Wen Jian, using the bitcoin. They weren't able to explain the source of Chen's wealth.
In reality, it was very basic. Miss Wen and Miss Chen didn't mix in criminal circles in the UK. So they didn't really know the best way of laundering, and they were trying to do the best that they could, which wasn't particularly good.
Police raided Chen's home multiple times, finding bundles of cash and expensive jewellery.
She needs lots of assistance.
Yeah. DC Ryan's team also found documents in which Chen set out her dreams and ambitions, all carefully itemised and costed, some of them running into the millions of pounds. These ranged from buying jewellery and entering into UK high society,
here for kingdom design,
to becoming Queen of Liberland, an unrecognised micronation on the Croatian-Serbian border. The price of Bitcoin has risen 20 times since 2017, and the haul seized by UK police from Chen is now worth £5 billion. And the UK courts are now deciding where it should go. Some reports have suggested the UK government will seek to retain the cryptocurrency. Victims believe they should be paid back. Mr. Yu, not his real name, said he invested around £100,000.
I suppose we were just too weak to resist. They pumped up our dreams until we lost all self-control, all critical judgment.
Yu was left in huge debt, and his marriage broke down.
We all read Sherlock Holmes, and that's still the image of the ultimate detective. To find all this Bitcoin, we are very grateful. We hope we get our money back. That's our great hope.
Tony Han, Global China Unit, BBC News.
China's biggest online shopping event, Singles' Day, is underway. And much like other big retail bonanzas like Black Friday, it's morphed into a much longer affair with Singles' Day sales this year starting last month. Here's our Asia business reporter, Nick Marsh.
I mean, it is a bit like Black Friday. You got Cyber Monday now and all the rest of it. What's happened in China this year, though, is Singles' Day has started really early, middle of October in some cases, Alibaba, for example. But some companies like Douyin or JD.com, they started on the 8th and 9th of October. So that's weeks and weeks of sales. And that really is a reflection of what's going on in China economically, because as we know, Chinese consumers for a few years now have been quite reluctant to spend. There's a few reasons. You have the COVID pandemic, of course, and the lockdowns associated with that, the property crisis, which is making people materially less wealthy, and then low wages, deflation, youth unemployment, that sort of thing. So even though every year that number goes up in terms of sales, last year it was 160 billion, that's about 4 times more than Black Friday, just to put it into context. Even though that number is going up, every year that rate of growth is slowing quite dramatically. So by extending this sales period, these companies, the e-commerce platforms, are hoping to drive up those sales even amidst more difficult economic times amongst their consumers.
Now, if you're feeling flush, perhaps the spare $20 or $30 million burning a hole in your pocket, well, you might consider this. In auction in Geneva today, here's what you could buy. The rare blue diamond, known as the Melon Blue, after its former owner, U.S. philanthropist and horticulturalist Bunny Mellon, is expected to break records later today at Christie's in Geneva. And Tobias Kormand is managing director of the jeweler's 77 Diamonds and explained why rare blue diamonds like this are likely to be in high demand.
So this is a 9.51 carat fancy vivid blue, and it's actually, so that's the color, one of the rarest, it's the 4th rarest color for diamonds, and, you know, incredibly sought after. And then in terms of its purity, it's internally flawless as well. So you really can't get much better. What's really interesting about this diamond is actually it was sold at auction. So it's quite unusual. 11 years later, in 2014, it's come back into the market. It was sold then by Sotheby's and bought by a Hong Kong businessman. And he named it the Zoe Diamond, but obviously originally belonged to Bunny Mellon. Its origins is actually unknown. So where it was sourced from, where we know most of the big blues that have sold at auction, you know, come from the Premier mine or the Cullinan mine in South Africa, which is one of the most famous mines. So it'll be really interesting to see. He bought it then for $32 million. The estimate now is $20 to $30 million.
Well, a stunning piece of jewelry there, and certainly one that is likely to fetch a high price. That's it for us today on BBC News. You can stay with the channel for more. Thanks for joining us.